Greetings, everyone. My name is Emily Louie, and on behalf of Campbell & Company, I would like to welcome you to Giving Tuesday 5, Measuring Success, our last webinar in our free Giving Tuesday webinar series. Thanks for joining us. Before we begin today's presentation, I'd like to quickly go through some logistics for those of you who may be new to our webinars. First, close any programs other than GoToWebinar that are running on your computer. We recommend calling in with a telephone instead of using your computer speakers, and please move your cell phone away from your computer. If you experience visual issues, send a chat to Campbell & Company or contact GoToWebinar at the number on your screen. Today's webinar is being recorded and will last 30 minutes. We won't be sharing presentation slides, but you will receive a link to the recording within 24 hours. We do welcome questions throughout the webinar. Please use the questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel that should be on the right side of your computer screen. We will also hold time at the end of the webinar for Q&A. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Kelsey Nelson, consultant here at Campbell & Company.
Thanks so much, Emily. It's a pleasure to be with you all today, and I thank you for joining me. I've been with the firm for 2 years, and prior to that, I worked in development in the higher ed and arts and culture sectors. Immediately before joining Campbell, I was an assistant director of annual giving at the University of Michigan, and while I was there, my team helped plan and launch U of M's first ever Giving Day, which takes place on Giving Tuesday. I also provided ongoing analysis of fundraising progress for a portfolio of schools, colleges, and units. So I was very focused on tracking key performance metrics and measuring progress towards goals. In my personal life as a volunteer, I both administered and participated in crowdfunding campaigns, and I'm particularly interested in how organizations can holistically evaluate their Giving Day and crowdfunding efforts in order to continually improve them and, if necessary, course correct from one year to the next. So very quickly, before we dig deep into measuring the success of Giving Tuesday campaigns, I want to give you a big picture view of what happened last week. According to the Giving Tuesday website, more than $380 million from 3.6 million gifts were raised in the U.S. This puts the mean gift size just above $100. This is more than double the $177 million from 1.6 million gifts raised last year. Wow, that's amazing, and I hope all of you who are a part of this through your organization's Giving Tuesday campaigns are feeling proud of your efforts and probably a little relieved that it's over. I'm sure some of you have seen Blackbaud's Giving Tuesday reports in past years. Some of the preliminary findings they've shared this year are that over 600,000 gift conversations using the Giving Tuesday hashtag took place on Twitter and Instagram, and 29% of all online donations processed came from mobile devices. That's up from 12% last year, so more than double. So in short, Giving Tuesday just keeps getting bigger, and the importance of mobile optimization and social media use also grows in significance each year. Okay, let's talk metrics. I want to quickly acknowledge that I'm sure every one of you who led a Giving Tuesday campaign this year had some combination of gift, social media, and participation metrics that you used to measure your success day of. For many of you, donors and dollars were probably your key metrics, and you may have prioritized one over the other. Some of you might have gotten a little more specific and focused on acquiring new donors or on matching a pool of challenge gifts, and still others of you might have decided to concentrate on engagement and awareness instead of financial goals, with some selection of social media, online, email metrics, or participation metrics for key constituencies like board, staff, other volunteers, alums, or young alumni. We're going to go a little deeper than those day of metrics in the next 20 minutes, but I first want to ask you all to share which of these 3 categories you focus on through your Giving Tuesday campaign. So we're going to flip to a live poll. And this poll is going to ask you which of the following best describes your organization's Giving Tuesday or Giving Day measurement. Day of gift metrics only, so that's donors and dollars. Day of gift and social media metrics. Day of gift, social media, and participation metrics. And then all of the above plus, meaning you're also looking at the behavior of Giving Tuesday donors throughout the remainder of the fiscal year and beyond. Great, so we have some results coming in, and I'm just going to pause for a minute until we get critical mass. All right. Awesome. So it looks like The majority of you, about a third of you, are saying day of gift metrics only, so you're really focused on donors and dollars raised on Giving Tuesday itself. Although it's nice to see that the next largest chunk of you are saying all of the above plus. So we've got a good combination in here, and I'm actually encouraged by that because I think that means you all hopefully will walk away today with a metric at least that you haven't thought of using before, and perhaps some ideas about how to move forward with that. All right, so quick break to remind you all to please thank your donors before you start slicing and dicing your data. Hopefully you all were posting personalized thank yous on social media throughout the day, and you're in the process of sending acknowledgments, making calls to new donors, and so on. I'd also encourage you to think about at what point you might be able to send out a follow-up thank you to report on impact once you have measurable data about what Giving Tuesday dollars made happen. Even if this is 3 to 6 months in the future, I really think it's worth doing. It serves as a nice touch point, and it's a great way to remind people that they gave to your organization on Giving Tuesday and tell them a little bit about what it's done for you. Okay, back to metrics. What I'm going to lead you through today are 3 Giving Tuesday scenarios and some potential metrics an organization might choose to align with the goals in each scenario. So when I say metrics, I mean data points that help track team performance towards a goal. Metrics are an important way to easily summarize what it is you're doing, evaluate how effective your efforts are, share information across teams and thus increase transparency, help manage up, down, and out, as it's much easier to hold your colleagues accountable when you have metrics to help you do so, encourage dialogue during and after analysis, and drive informed decision-making. Even if your organization didn't use any of the goals I'm going to highlight in the upcoming case studies, I'd encourage you again, do a little investigating, test out 1 or 2 of the metrics we go over, and once you have some data points to share, host a postmortem with your planning team to start really to dig into ROI and potentially make some strategic adjustments before next year. So for these case studies, I've selected some 2017 success stories from GivingTuesday.org, and then imagined some of the follow-up analysis and subsequent conversations those organizations might have had. So I guess you can sort of think of this as Giving Tuesday-themed historical fiction. First up is the organization No Kid Hungry. In 2016, they raised $56,000 to provide healthy food to kids. And in 2017, they set a goal to raise $100,000. They ended up securing a match from Citibank that helped them raise more than $310,000, or 4 times the previous year's results. So No Kid Hungry clearly blew their day of Giving Tuesday goal out of the water. But let's assume their ultimate motivation was to use Giving Tuesday to create a lift in their year-end fundraising. What other metrics might they look at? Well, they'd want to look at total dollars raised in November and December this year versus previous years. And that varies in terms of how far you want to go back. You might go back 3 years, 5 years. You might go back to however many years there have been since you started doing Giving Tuesday. They'd also want to look at total dollars raised in those months through online channels versus those raised through direct mail and other channels. And they might find that Giving Tuesday has allowed them to move the needle on their year-end fundraising, that it's really gone up, it's been the boost that they were looking for. Or they might discover that Giving Tuesday is driving up their online giving, but their direct mail appeal is actually less productive than it used to be, since those donors are in effect being trained to migrate to online channels on Giving Tuesday. So at that point, they should probably have a conversation about whether Giving Tuesday is worth it, given that overall year-end fundraising has remained fairly steady. And some of the potential decisions they could make would be perhaps to scale back their efforts and amount of resources allotted to Giving Tuesday so that it more closely parallels what they were doing at year-end before. Perhaps they might think about hosting a Giving Day at a different time of the year when they can capture the attention of more of their donor base. I think you see this a lot with universities and now more and more K-12 schools who are choosing to do a Giving Day at a different time of year when they can really focus on their alumni base. Sometimes that's a Founders Day or another date of significance within their community, and it allows them to not have to cut through the noise of Giving Tuesday. One other thing an organization might do is take a more careful look at how they can focus their Giving Tuesday campaign on a different audience or funding need than their year-end appeal. So this is a way to say, okay, maybe our year-end appeal is really good at renewing our loyal donors, but we think we might just want to send our Giving Tuesday appeals to our non-donors because it works well as an acquisition tool. And this is just a way to diversify efforts and cover more ground. All right, so we just talked about year-over-year growth. I think that's probably the number one reason to do Giving Tuesday. The number two reason is new donor acquisition. So we're moving now from a dollar focus to a donor focus. In 2017, Tufts University set a goal to engage 5,000 donors, and they had a matching gift of $500,000 that they'd unlock if they met their goal. They ended up shattering their goal, reaching 7,529 donors who collectively gave more than $2 million. So here, it seems pretty clear that Tufts' ultimate goal was to grow its donor base by using Giving Tuesday as an acquisition tool. So beyond their day of success, what other metrics should they be looking at? My guess is they'd want to look at how many of those 7,500 donors were first-time donors and track the activity of that subset pretty closely. So they should look at this group and monitor how many of them made a second gift before the next Giving Tuesday. And they'd also want to look at renewal and upgrade rates for this subset on the next Giving Tuesday. They could find that these new Giving Tuesday donors behave a lot like their other newly acquired donors, in which case it seems like it's a pretty good acquisition tool. Or they could find that they have a lot of trouble renewing these donors through any appeal except a Giving Tuesday appeal, and that in many cases, after a few years, those donors stop renewing at all. And in that case, they might want to talk more about the suspicion that donors who make their first gifts on Giving Tuesday don't respond to regular appeals. I think, sometimes you have your core group of Giving Tuesday donors who, especially in a school setting, perhaps their parents or current students, for a community organization, perhaps they're people who live in the community and really want to give locally on Giving Tuesday, but haven't really taken the time to learn much about the organization in the intervening year, and you lose them after time. So some of the potential decisions you might make if you're faced with this eventuality is to first create a separate segment for first-time Giving Tuesday donors in next year's Giving Tuesday communications and solicitations. So this is kind of just embracing the fact that you're going to have some people who give only on Giving Tuesday, and tailoring a specific message to them where you're saying, we know you gave last year on Giving Tuesday. We're so glad you came on board. Help us again on this National Day of Giving to maximize impact. So that's really just, going all the way with the collective impact messaging and acknowledging the fact that these people only want to give on this particular holiday. Something else you might consider is targeting those donors for other crowdfunding or flash campaigns throughout the year that are similarly driven through online channels and that incorporate the same collective impact messaging as on Giving Tuesday. That can be a great way to get these donors to either make a second gift at some point throughout the year or sort of just start to learn more about your initiatives and your programs and get them more used to seeing and being asked to support projects at different times of the year. Of course, you can always think about increased and innovative ways of stewarding those donors, again, just to try to strengthen their connection to the organization. So maybe that's an extra welcome packet, or again, like I was referencing, that special thank you 3 to 6 months in the future. That's a way to get back in touch and be more high touch with them. All right, so the last example, the last case study that I'm going to take you all through today is a slightly different example as it features a corporate giving program. So in 2017, JPMorgan Chase decided they wanted to up the ante in their Giving Tuesday challenge, in which they matched all employees' donations 2 to 1. And they were going to do this by bestowing the title of Most Generous State to the employees of the state that gave and thus raised the most money on Giving Tuesday. And through this extra challenge, they ended up raising $4.7 million, which is $1 million more than was raised in 2016. So let's use this Chase example as a proxy for an organization that sets a goal to boost participation and raise more money on GivingTuesday. So this is an organization that's trying to, yes, acquire new donors, but also encourage their loyal donors to give more. How should they be measuring success? Well, I'd suggest they look at the average annual gift of GivingTuesday donors versus the overall average annual gift size for the organization. So you're looking at, if the average annual gift is $105 for GivingTuesday, how does that compare to a full year and what that gift size is? They should also look at the average annual gift of non-first-time GivingTuesday donors. So these are your donors, current, prior, and 1 to 2 year lapsed donors who are making a GivingTuesday gift. And you want to see how their gift size compares to their average annual gift over the past 3 fiscal years or 5 fiscal years. It's sort of up to you to determine the time period. This organization might find that their average gift sizes are similar, but they might instead find that GivingTuesday donors on average make smaller gifts than the typical annual donor. And some loyal donors are downgrading because, again, they're being asked to migrate their giving to GivingTuesday, and they're making smaller gifts than they would at another time of the year. So if that's the case, I think the organization would want to consider whether their use of participation-focused messaging on GivingTuesday is actually driving down revenue. A lot of times this happens because, we get swept up in the holiday and the whole idea that, lots of donors giving modest gifts creates big impact. We sort of play into that messaging, and then what that can do is if we're including our loyal donors who perhaps have been upgrading or who have been at a higher level in those appeals, they're choosing to give them, but they feel like they can make more of a token gift or sort of a gift that they would make to another organization they might not normally support on GivingTuesday. And then they're kind of forgetting about it and seeing that as their participation for the year. So what are some adjustments an organization might make in that scenario? Well, something they could consider would be sending what I call a fill-in-the-gap appeal to that segment of loyal donors who downgraded on GivingTuesday. And what that looks like is as you're nearing the end of your organization's fiscal year or, perhaps the next year, as you're looking back at giving and you've seen these folks who have downgraded because they gave on GivingTuesday, and hopefully there aren't more than sort of a handful of them. You can pull them into a special appeal or a special segment of an existing appeal, and you can send them a message that really says, hey, we'd love for you to get back up to your previous level of giving, or perhaps even surpass it. Would you consider another gift at year end to get you there? So that's something that can work. Another thing that you can do is kind of take a page out of Chase's book and amp up your incentives by finding more matching donors. So I know many of you are already thinking about this and probably doing it well, that you have in your loyal donors, and especially your folks who have been giving to you for many years, you think have the capacity to give more but are kind of stuck at a certain level, to go to them around GivingTuesday, hopefully in advance, and invite them either to become a matching donor or sometimes for slightly lower levels become part of a matching pool. And that can be a really effective way to get those folks to the next level by saying, hey, by stepping up and sharing that you've stepped up with the rest of our community, you're going to drive lots more gifts for us, and your gift impact is going to be magnified. So that's something you might try. Or again, you might even decide that you want to focus your GivingTuesday appeals solely on non-loyal donors. You have that, year-end appeal or other methods in place that work well for renewals. You're going to let those work their magic, and then you're going to take GivingTuesday and really focus it on a specific subset, whether that be new donors, sometimes perhaps younger donors. Maybe you want to get an auxiliary board, really involved and kind of let them run with it. Just do a little bit of digging and decide, what segment is this working best for, and would there be any value in future years only targeting our GivingTuesday appeals to them. So this brings us to the end of our case studies, and I'm glad to see actually, I know I went through this pretty quickly, but we've got about 10 minutes left. So I'd love to hear from some of you about whether you have successfully tracked any of these metrics and what you found. or what sticks out to you as having the most potential to reveal new information and drive decision-making for your organization. And if you have other questions, feel free to shoot them over to us as well. And if I can't get to them today, I'll follow up with you offline. But hopefully we've got time to get through a big chunk. And I think Emily is going to be monitoring those. So I'll let you take it, Emily.
Thanks, Kelsey. We don't have any questions or comments at the moment, but I will be tracking them. So if you do, please remember to send them through the questions box.
And for any of you who are feeling brave and want to share, if there are metrics that you're tracking that I didn't mention today, I think that'd be highly valuable for the group. Know that this is just a subset and things that I've used in the past. But depending on your goals and objectives, and especially if you were more focused on sort of the social media or online metrics or participation, there might be some ways that you're measuring success that I didn't talk about today. All right, I think we've got a shy group today, or perhaps just one that's giving Tuesday'd out, which I completely understand. So we'll wait another minute or so just to see if any questions come through. But otherwise, I'd encourage you all. We have here our Giving Tuesday 2018 toolkit. Obviously, that has come and passed, but we do have some stewardship and metrics recommendations in it. And if you're looking to get a jump start on planning for next year, we'd encourage you to just flip through and see if there is anything else in it that you think could be beneficial for your organization to look at. We have all of our 5-part webinar series recorded, and we'll be sending out an email with all of this information afterwards. So feel free to take a look and reach out to any of us here if you have questions. And we hope this was helpful and that you enjoy a few minutes back for your lunch hour.
Kelsey, sorry, it seems like we have some last-minute questions.
Great.
So first off, we have a comment from Amanda saying that we had success this year with peer-to-peer campaigns, particularly on Facebook. Unfortunately, it seems we can't collect donor data. Thoughts on how to connect with these donors?
That's a great question. So I think that, you can use your social channels now that you have people who are following you there to hopefully do some collection. I think a giveaway is a really great way to do this. So, on using your social accounts to post a survey, even just, like a 2-question survey asking for people's emails, and maybe a question about whether they supported you on Giving Tuesday, and say there's an opportunity if you respond to this quick survey to receive a gift certificate for something, or we'll send you some swag. That's a great way to kind of organically do it. Another way that you could do that is really by following up with those who were involved with you as ambassadors. So those people who were working their magic as your peer solicitors day of, ask them if they can sort of do a quick audit through their posts, and they might have a really good sense of who of their friends and networks gave, and they might be able to provide you with that information. I know that's happened to me in the past. I've been a volunteer and I've been asked by an organization retroactively to provide email addresses or other contact information for people that I have gotten to come to events and that sort of thing. And I'm always willing to do that if I know that those folks have already sort of pledged their support in the form of a gift. So those are just a couple of ideas.
Thanks, Kelsey. We have a question from Lisa asking if you can elaborate on measuring social media on Giving Tuesday.
Yeah. So what I really think social media is great for is the engagement. You can use tools that you might have, if you use something like a Hootsuite or other online tools to measure activity, you can be looking to see which of your posts got the most traffic, and some of that you can see just by scrolling back through your feeds, which ones got the most likes, the most shares, the most comments. One thing to look at too is, did you have a lot of activity, perhaps comments on posts that then you weren't following up on. I think it's nice to set some goals from year to year around day of responses to people. So people who are, using any functionality that might exist to say, hey, I've made a gift. You want to make sure that you have some cute, GIFs or thank you graphics to post, and that you've got plans in place. But I would really say, start with those engagement metrics, looking at likes, comments, shares, retweets if you're on Twitter, that sort of thing. Hopefully you already have the tools set up that allow you to look at that. If you don't, reach out to us and we can certainly help recommend some of those tools. So really around engagement and awareness, that's where I'd say social media has the biggest impact. And, if you want to dig a little deeper, you can start looking at, demographic or data or some of the back end stuff you might be able to get your hands on. But just engagement year over year, if you have done this for a couple years, look back and see if that's grown. Look at how many times you posted throughout the day and think about whether that was the right schedule or whether you might be able to pare down or amp up at a certain time of the day.
Great. And then we have one comment from Kristen about an interesting Giving Tuesday kind of technique that she saw about OpenTable, the reservation system, prompted her on Giving Tuesday to donate points to No Kid Hungry. And I believe it allowed her to donate gift credits from the nonprofit, and she received an email receipt for her taxes for the points that she donated. And she was just wondering if this is something you've ever seen before or if this is a common action.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I love that there's a tie-in, too, because No Kid Hungry is actually featured in one of the case studies that I pulled out. So that goes together nicely. I did not see that OpenTable did that, but I think that's really fascinating. Something I did observe, I think I was on, an airline buying a ticket on Giving Tuesday, and they had an option to, donate some of your miles. And I know that sometimes that's done around disaster relief as well. So that's an interesting technique. I think if you have an idea of, any organizations that might be willing to do that sort of thing for you, it would be wonderful to capitalize on it. Those are going to be your OpenTables, your United Airlines, your bigger corporations that are able to do that, and they're probably looking for a federalized, national organization to partner with. But I think that brings up a great point that you all have local businesses and local partners, and when you're kind of starting off your planning for the next year, especially if you're looking for a pool of matching donors, don't forget your local businesses. Don't forget the people who you have connections to in the community who might be willing to use whatever means they have to promote you on Giving Tuesday, whether that's, an extra 10 cents at the checkout line or, a percentage of each meal that's served. Those sorts of things oftentimes don't have a lot of ROI, I think, separately, but on something like a Giving Tuesday, I think they can be a really wonderful way to just get the word out and get people thinking again about your organization instead of all of the, thousands and thousands of others that they could be thinking about.
Great. So it looks like we're about all out of time today, but we thank you for joining us, and please don't hesitate to contact Kelsey at the email on your screen if you have any other questions that we didn't get to. Thank you all.
Thank you.